Friend, Shabbat Shalom to everyone. I thank you for the privilege of speaking to you. What I'm talking about this evening is a little bit intense. I'm warning you, but I believe that my responsibility as a rabbi is to show that Judaism, our 3,500-year-old tradition, has something profound to say about the great issues of the day. There is a phrase that is used in our political discussions in our country which I find to be offensive. It's the term pro-life. When someone labels themselves as pro-life, they assert they are taking an exalted moral position when it comes to the issue of abortion. That all human life is holy, that a fetus from conception is a human being, and abortion, by definition, is a rejection of the sanctity of life. Therefore, anyone who accepts the legal permissibility of an abortion is immoral, evil, perhaps worthy of death. I find this pro-life position to be offensive. First, I don't know anyone except a sociopath that doesn't believe that life is sacred. In a civilized society, murder is forbidden. We learned that in the Ten Commandments last week. Murder is wrong and should be punished. All decent people believe that the saving of a life is sacred. That is why we believe in medicine, medical care, public health, organ donation, seat belts, health inspection of restaurants, airline safety regulation. Who is not pro-life? No one political party owns it, even though they claim to. Second, those people who believe in the right to abortion are not murderers. They're not evil people. They just see the issue of abortion as much more complicated than the so-called pro-life people. So for the purpose of my message this evening, let us divide the world between pro-choice and anti-choice. That's the honest distinction. Pro-choice, anti-choice. Let's understand the issue from the Jewish point of view. And again, I apologize, it's a little bit graphic, but you can't talk about this without actually talking about what we're talking about, if that makes any sense. Judaism is not for abortion. Judaism is pro-life. The fetus is a potential life. It should not be treated in a cavalier manner. But in Judaism, life does not begin at conception. The fetus is not viewed as separate from the parent's body until birth begins and the head of a child begins to emerge. Only then is the fetus a person. Furthermore, Judaism makes it very clear. The well-being of the mother takes precedent over the fetus. This is described in one verse or several verses on our Torah portion for this Shabbat. In the Torah, Exodus 21, verses 22-23, it recounts a story of two men who are fighting and injure a pregnant woman, resulting in her subsequent miscarriage. The verse explains that if the only harm done is the miscarriage, then the perpetrator must pay a fine. However, if the pregnant person is gravely injured, the penalty shall be a life for a life, as in other homicides. The common rabbinic interpretation of this verse is that these men did not commit murder and that the fetus is not a person. The primary concern is the well-being of the person who has been injured. That is the major thrust of Jewish law. Now, I don't like to describe the graphics of this, but I need to explain to you what the rabbis say concerning their understanding of the Torah. Here is a statement that is found in the Talmud, the authoritative document in Jewish tradition. If a woman is in hard labor that threatens her life, one dismembers a fetus within her because her life takes precedent over its life. Once the greater part of it, the head, emerges, it may not be touched, for we do not set aside one life for another. And Rashi, the great commentator, says, as long as a child did not come into the world, It is not called a living being, and it is therefore permissible to take its life in order to save the life of its mother. A complementary idea is developed by the 12th century sage Maimonides, who develops the idea of self-defense. That is, in Jewish law, one is permitted to defend oneself, even to the extent of taking the attacker's life should one's own life be in jeopardy. And his understanding is that in some circumstances, the fetus threatens the life of the mother, and as something life-threatening, the pregnancy can be terminated. Again, these are very troubling, difficult things to talk about, but Judaism deals with them in a real, clear, legalistic but compassionate way. This is Judaism's pro-life position. The mother needs her life protected. But Jewish tradition goes even further. What does it mean for a woman's life to be threatened? It's not just physical. Ben-Zion Uziel was the Sephardic chief rabbi of Palestine from 1939 through 1948, and of Israel from 1948 until his death in 1953. I first encountered him when I was studying Jewish legal codes when I was in rabbinical school. And this is what he says. He says, it's clear that abortion is not permitted without reason. That would be destructive and frustrative of the possibility of life. But for a reason, even if it's a slim reason, the Hebrew word is ta'am kalush, such as to prevent nivul, disgrace, or then we have precedence and authority to permit it. So Rabbi Uziel considers a woman's pain as a deciding factor in determining whether there may be an abortion. He does not differentiate between life-threatening situations and those that are detrimental to her health and even mental anguish. Sense of shame, of fear of disgrace, or even a slight reason such as a fear of disfigurement would be sufficient to allow for abortion. Now, I don't think people who object to the idea of abortion are wrong. People who are against abortion, I understand it. You can make a great a moral argument against it. I respect and honor their position. They are free to advocate it. But can't we cut through the rhetoric and the posturing and the self-righteousness and the moral duplicity and frame the discussion appropriately and honestly? Anti-choice means a woman has no power over her body. She is not free. She has no choices. Anti-choice prevents Jewish women from practicing her Judaism. Judaism says that at times an abortion is not just permitted, it is required to save the mother's life. We don't talk about it in those terms, but let's say what it is. A pro-choice is exactly what it says. That in this complex issue where different faith traditions and alternate ethical systems generate different conclusions, we must allow this to be a private, sacred decision of conscience of the individual. No pro-abortion, no pro-life, choice versus anti-choice. Now, this issue has become incredibly relevant because the Supreme Court last week denied abortion providers' latest request to intervene in the ongoing legal challenges against Texas restrictive abortion law. Since September 1st, abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy have been banned in Texas. The law was designed to evade judicial review through a unique enforcement mechanism that allows private citizens to bring lawsuits against anyone who aids and abets in a prohibited abortion. In other words, if you're a cab driver and drive someone to an abortion clinic, you can be sued and end up being fined. That's how crazy it is. The reform movement has come out very explicitly about this issue, very clear. I'm very proud of our position on this issue. I cut it down, but I want to give you the basic points of what the Reform Judaism has said about this. It says, we denounce in the strongest terms the law in Texas effectively making abortion care illegal in that state. In the most insidious state abortion restrictions adopted to date, this Texas law makes abortion illegal as early as 6 weeks before many are even aware that they are pregnant. The law is manipulatively designed to thwart courts' ability to protect reproductive freedom, prohibiting state officials from enforcing the law, but empowering any Texan to sue any person who assists in accessing abortion care. It's surreal. I mean, if anyone helps anyone get an abortion, you can end up being fined. We are concerned about individuals who cannot afford travel long distances to secure abortion care in neighboring states. And we are also deeply concerned, I want you to hear this, we are also deeply concerned about Jews who will be unable to pursue an abortion in keeping with Jewish law, which mandates abortion when necessary to preserve the pregnant person's well-being. With respect to Judaism's own limited approval of abortion, this is so clear and correct. As we would not impose the historic positions of Jewish teachings upon individuals that are legislated as normative for a society at large. In other words, we don't want to impose the Jewish position on anyone. So we would not wish the position of any other group imposed upon the Jewish community or the general population. Let's stop imposing our moral vision on another person. Friends, I am fearful that liberty in so many ways is threatened in our nation. This does not feel like the United States that I've always believed in. I know many share my concerns. Now, I don't know what's going to happen to Roe v. Wade. I really don't. I'm not a legal scholar, but I do know three things. First, the majority of Americans want abortion choice. Second, support of abortion rights is essential for our Jewish religious freedom. I mean that really sincerely. And third, no matter what the Supreme Court says, we Reformed Jews need to continue to fight for choice. Not because we celebrate abortion, God forbid, there's nothing to celebrate. But we know that in a world where moral consensus is not possible and life is complicated, we must protect the freedom and dignity and integrity of every woman to make her own decisions about the most private and sacred parts of her being. Shabbat Shalom.